Hello, hello. We cannot hear you, Jim. I think you're going.
Hello.
Yes, now we can hear you. Hello, it's nice to see you. Welcome, all ours. I see there's a few at least participants who joined our talks on the Agile Couch, which we have, virtual, physical, but still virtual. So if you have any questions, just use, the QA poll or the chat poll. I will be able to read those. Yeah, that's actually maybe I will begin from one which I had a question. I saw that there was a question in your session from a person, and he asked a lot of developers' main problem with agile way of working is that there is not enough time spent thinking on longevity of the code. It usually ends in a mess in a couple of years of sprints. What do you think the reason of that?
Ineffective product ownership and ineffective developers. Gosh, I don't want to put too much blame around, but it's everybody's fault.
Yeah,
shame on everyone.
yeah.
Oh, that's a sad situation, and unfortunately not uncommon. I think in some ways, gosh, it's where do you look at what root cause is? There's so much possibilities here. I often find that organizations, the most popular agile framework is Scrum. So I find that most organizations are implementing and they're maintaining existing dysfunctional behaviors, and they're just calling them by different names. And so we have the instantiation of a product owner role, but we don't empower them to be real product owners, and we don't set expectations that you're a product owner for life. As long as the product exists, we need to have a product owner. And so back in the 1980s here in the US, there was a gentleman named Barry Beam who did research. I believe he was at Berkeley at the time. He did research on the cost of a defect if you remediated it before it got into production. So you discovered it while you were still in development. Versus correcting a defect after it was in production and customers were using it. And what he found was the cost of a defect was 100 times higher to remediate after it got into production than it would have been if they had simply fixed it, up front before it got to production. And part of that is that you're still in the mindset of working on that feature, so you don't have to go and do research and figure out what's going on, and might not even be the same people later on that encounter the problem. So there's a lot of waste later on in trying to figure this out. But imagine if you were the product owner and you knew that you were going to have to pay that price later on, that 100 times higher cost. That might cause you to make a different decision when your team comes to you and says, we've got this problem. I know we need to deploy, but we've got this problem. We really need to focus on it. We often will have product owners who look at that situation and go, oh, we've got to, their expectations, we've got to deploy, and they release a sub-quality product into production. And when I say sub-quality, that could be maintainability. In other words, the team didn't appropriately refactor their code. They might not have put in a solution that was extensible or flexible, or maintainable. And the team's like, yeah, we got it working. It works, but it's terrible the way it's implemented. So smart product owners, especially if they know it's going to boomerang back on them later on, and it's going to hit them 100 times harder, cost them more later. That leads to more likely having a product that's released into production at an appropriate level of quality that avoids these things that the person with the question was expressing. And when I say it's everyone's fault, I don't want to put it on the product owner, because it's not the product owners. They can't do it by themselves. One is they have to be empowered. The organization has to respect their decisions and have them, what I refer to as, and I learned this from a project manager out of Australia named Rob Tomsett, and he shared this with me, is that the product owner, he called it a business sponsor at the time. This was early days in Agile. They have to wield the baseball bat and the bag of money. So the baseball bat is they have the organizational authority to resolve any and all conflict in the product space. And the bag of money is they can spend the money any way they want, once they got the money to spend on building the product. So if you have that empowered product owner, their decisions, what they say, are respected by everyone in the organization. Now, their decisions have to be informed, and this is where I'm going to hold the team accountable as well as others outside of the team that are maybe in, the chief architect or the chief engineer and others within the organization that provide advice and guidance. It's on them to make sure the product owner has the information they need to make the right decision. So we don't want to have the product owner making decisions that are uninformed, that they don't understand the risks. So it's on everyone to work with the product owner to help them be effective in that role. So anyway, that's my soapbox. I'll get off the soapbox.
I totally agree on you, because I don't think, again, that should be one person or one role to blame. It's, I think, in general.
Yeah, it's unfortunately something it's unfortunately something that's done as teams go. It's been decades that everybody threw all the problem on the developers and said, you go figure it out. And then the customer then blamed them when they came back and it wasn't working in the way that they had hoped it would work. And now they're saying the tables are turned and we're going to, make you figure it out. It's like that isn't healthy either. It has to be everyone together, working together with a shared goal and trying to optimize that creation of customer value, which requires sustainability of the product. So it's an excellent question. I'm so glad it was asked.
Great. During your speech, you mentioned about learning loops, and then that this double loop can be added only if the first layer of the learning loop is already working and implemented. But if it's not, do you have any, again, few comments, few suggestions where to start, where to find this reflection on your own?
Yeah, I'm going to put it back on the product owner a little bit again. So it's up to the product owner to understand what quality is for the product, and this helps inform what. And I'm going to use Scrum to discuss some of these concepts because it's fairly commonly understood by people. Well, I don't know if it's commonly understood. At least we think we understand it. But so the definition of done that we find there is like what is it that has to be accomplished for us to arrive with something that is a true increment of the product. So we have to have that definition of done clearly understood and bought in by the entire product community, and especially the developers, the people who are building the product, because that's their standard that they have to hit by the end of the sprint for the sprint review, to have that inspectable increment of the product, because that's what activates the learning loop. You gotta be. It should be the default that single loop learning happens routinely. It would be the exception if you didn't arrive at a sprint review having not accomplished the thing. It does happen because there are unknowns and you can't control everything. But the default should be that you arrive at the sprint review having completed the item that you set out to do. So we need to know what completed the item means. So we have to have a rigorous definition of done, and we need to have the discipline to comply with that and truly arrive there. So often teams create these inadequate definitions of done, and then there's all this undone work that must be completed before you can deploy, and that just creates risk because we don't know what's going to happen when we go to attempt to do that undone work. So we have to create that inspectable increment. So again, how the product owner can help with this is they can withhold features. So it's not uncommon in my experience for teams to overcommit. And especially if they don't have a discipline of a rigorous definition of done, they'll get, several items in a sprint to what they consider to be done, but they're not truly done, right? They're not truly done. So they haven't mastered the discipline of truly getting to done. So how the product owner can help this is simple exercises. I'm going to give you one very simple, what you've told me, team, is a very easy thing to do, and you're quite confident you'll get that done by the end of the sprint. And I'm only going to give you that one item. And the team will go, but we can take on so much more. And it's like, well, prove it, because we've been through, several sprints and we're not truly getting to done. So let's be honest with each other. Let's have clarity around the definition of done, and let's make sure that we actually hit that. So the product owner can help the team out by not giving them the chance to overcommit. You just pick one thing and get that truly to done, and that'll make it more clear that it's not done, and that team members are kind of standing around going, well, I don't have anything to do here because you don't need me on that particular task. It's like, yeah, but it's still not done. It's we need to work to figure out how to get it done. So if it's not getting done, why not? What's in its way? What's blocking it? And if the team finishes that item and there's still more time in the sprint, there's no reason why they can't go, and ask their product owner, hey, do you have anything else? We got this thing done. But I would caution the product owner to, at that point, say, okay, prove it. Let's sit down and look at it together and make sure that we are being honest with each other, that this is truly done. So I would suggest do less, do less in order to make it more possible. And then once you've mastered that single learning loop and you are confident that you can arrive successfully at the end of your sprint or your iteration, having met that standard, now we have that inspectable increment. And having, a single inspectable increment is infinitely better than having no inspectable increments. And when I say an increment, I mean, truly the increment is the thing that works. So often we arrive at the sprint review and we have something that's like, well, we worked really hard in this sprint, and I want to recognize these team members that stayed late and over the weekend and how hard. What are we not hearing about? We're not hearing about the product feature that was intended to be here that we could look and see. All we're hearing about is all the hard work. Frankly, this is cynical, Jim. Your stakeholders, your product stakeholders don't care how hard your team works. What they care about is, do I have something that will work for me? And that is the reward for a developer. I mean, I was in the trenches as a developer. Nothing made me more proud than to see a customer take the output of my work and tell me, I hate this. This is terrible, because I knew they cared. It was like, it wasn't that I had to be successful in hitting the mark every time, the target of exactly what was perfect for them. What I really desired was a customer who cared. And if they told me what they didn't like about it, then I could take that information and do a better job to create something that would be a better fit. But what was never in doubt was the ability to give them something to react to. That was the critical thing.
Yeah, nice. And then, well, let's say we already had this first loop of learning, which we see that it's working. We're adding second loop of the learnings. Then do you recommend to use that second loop of learning every review from that on?
Oh, yes, it never ends. Yeah, the second loop is always, we create solutions for our customers in appropriately in an agile space. They're unknowns, and there's dynamics and there's change. So the thing that we created now, it's temporary. It's temporary. It's going to become obsolete. Something is going to happen at some point, and it may be soon, it might be later. Something will happen that will make that no longer the best fit for the customer need. And so we have to, this is one of the reasons why in Scrum we have a product owner, and the product owner is for the life of the product. And hopefully the product never dies, because if we have a product owner who's paying attention, we can pivot. Right, we can pivot to completely new technology. We can pivot to a completely new form factor or approach to being the thing that fits into the fabric of the customer's job to be done. In fact, more advanced product owners will become consultative to the customer and might actually change other aspects of the customer's job to be done that are not what the product originally did in that workflow. It could be something that dynamically changes the entire way that the customer thinks about and approaches their job to be done. So the nature of the product is this thing that can morph and change based upon our discoveries, what emerges as we go and what the possibilities are. And that's what enables organizations to become the preferred source for what that customer seeks in helping them accomplish that job to be done. That's what gives the competitive advantage. Is it's a value add. You're no longer just delivering a widget or a paper cup or to the customer. You've innovated, and you are now being more consultative in helping them achieve success in addressing whatever their need might be. And again, that need evolves and changes through time. So having a product owner who can own that and pay attention to that and enable this discovery, it all comes from ultimately the customer at the center.
And yeah, we have only a few more minutes, so maybe the last question, because I don't see any questions for the audience. I saw, and there was a question straight away, you know, will you share the slides? And then you showed, you know, this our
I have no slides.
approach. Yes, and that's what I wanted to ask. Like, well, I only maybe know the answer from your side, but do you see the benefits and the maybe downsides from the, you know, this old slide approach when you're showing the PDFs or whatever, and then this visual part where you know, drawing, showing, and engaging the customer or the, you know, the people.
So I always share the drawings to anybody who wishes to have them, and absolutely feel free to use those things. So I'll work with you and figure out how we can make these available to the attendees. You know, at a minimum, they can contact me directly, and I'll be more than happy to send them a PDF of the two drawings that I did today. Why do I draw? I find people's eyes, they kind of roll back in their heads, and they're no longer present when they look at a slide, because slides are cold. And when I draw, that's kind of slow emergence of what it is that's appearing, people are paying attention to it. It creates some curiosity. You know, what is this? And it's harder to do than slides, frankly. You know, being able to talk and draw at the same time, it took me quite a while to be able to do that. This is one of the more complex drawings that I do. I have to get those 3 circles to have this intersection with enough space to draw a little customer in the middle and another little circle. So this one's a little harder than most of the ones that I draw. But I encourage teams to use these lower tech communications approaches, you know, with any type of engagement. You know, when you sit down with leaders and you show them a beautiful chart that was created by some drawing program or an output from Excel or one of the automated tools. I don't want to mention any names right here, but you know, people look at those things, and I'm not sure that they're really paying that much attention to them. They're cold, and you know, whereas you hand draw, for example, a burn chart. You know, if you hand draw a burn up chart, people are like, "Ooh, what's that telling me?" Why did somebody spend the time?
That's why I wanted to ask your opinion, and that's why I was so glad that, you know, people had this question, and you say, no, look, I will speak, and then I will draw. So yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, people are always concerned that they don't draw well. It's like, I don't draw that well. It's you know, just practice. People will forgive you. it's not, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect.
And practice makes it perfect or better. So
yes,
people need to practice. Cool. Great. Thank you, Jim. It was really nice to have you, you know, on this virtual couch. I hope that someday maybe we'll be able to meet and then sit on the normal.
Oh, would love to come and visit. Beautiful area of the world, and I'm just hoping that'll be possible, you know, sooner as opposed to later. But yes. Thank you so much for including me.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you all. See ya in a short break with our speakers. So have a nice conference.
Good.
Bye.